So welcome everyone, and I hope you all had a fabulous Labor Day. I know I stayed into town. It was after the Hurricane Larry was passing through. I decided not to go upstate for the weekend and spend the time here because sometimes when you have a rain event like this, there's flooding on the roads upstate, the power goes out and all that, and I didn't want to risk getting up to a house where the power was not on. Because when you have a well, if the power is not on, you don't have water. And you're basically, I have these 5 gallons big water container, but it's cold water for you to just wash your face and drink, and it's not fun, okay? So I decided to stay in town, and I hope you did enjoy whatever activity that you were doing. I wanted to continue our conversation about spiritual readiness and all of us being prepared for the transformation and the change that is taking place right now. I know we've been talking a lot in the past about many of these various topics, but what I want to do today is that I want to discuss, I want to go deep because I want us to begin to understand, at least this is the way I'm interpreting it. Nothing will ever be the same again. So I'm thinking of where I was 2 years ago, before COVID, before all of this began to precipitate, before January 6th, before all of this began to precipitate down. Where was I? What was I doing? And what kind of frame of mind that I was in. Yes, I had insights, I had foresights, I had channeled a lot of that information, and I had channeled everything that was about to happen. But it is a completely different thing to live through it. Because when you're channeling, you're seeing it from an ascended perspective. You're looking at the event down, like you're disconnected to it. But when you're in it, and your entire emotional body and everything is encompassing it, and you're engulfed in it, it's a very different experience. It doesn't matter how much you prepare, how much you think you're ready, you're not ready. You're not ready. And one of the things that I'm inviting you to understand today is that all of this, and I can refer you back to some of the early channeling from 2015, where they were already talking about not only the pathogen that was going to cause a massive human die-off, but they were also talking about the storms, wildfire. They were talking about hurricanes. They even said that a hurricane that would be category 6 and 7, which, by the way, someone else predicted that this is going to happen in this hurricane season. I don't know if this is going to happen or not. Maybe we'll get a soft landing. This is another seer that reached out to me, somebody from the Order of Melchizedek class who saw this. Okay? So what I'm saying is that, and the storm, the drought, the erratic weather patterns, where about a month and a half ago, in the middle of 2 states in Brazil had almost 2 feet of snow. Then a month later, all of Argentina was completely covered in 1.5 feet of snow. Weird, bizarre weather patterns that are causing unease. Or let's talk about Haiti, earthquakes. And I don't have to paint the picture. You get my drift. Okay, I don't want to scare people more. You get my drift. Now, whether you're aware of this consciously or unconsciously, there is unease. When you're sleeping at night, you may think you're at rest, but you're not completely at rest, because there's a part of you that's connected to the group body of humanity. There's a collective experience that we have created for us by our past action for the last 250 years that is causing us to collectively have this experience. So this is what I want to unpack today. I want to kind of talk about that. What are we trying to learn? And I've said this since the beginning of the pandemic, since April, March of 2000, that what we're trying to learn and what we're trying to understand is to connect and process grief. Because it doesn't matter who you are, the conditions for since March 2020 has been as such that you're grieving a loss of some kind. Loss of income, loss of mobility, loss of actual people that that have died. I know personally of 10 people who have passed away from COVID, including my own cousin. So this thing with COVID is not an abstraction for me. It's something that I'm living. And I have a very disparate perspective. I don't want to get involved in the politics and the, what you should be doing or not doing. That's your individual choice. I'm not going to talk about it here. But what I can say about you to you is this. I happen to be very blessed to have people, friends and family members who happen to work in healthcare. And the damage that this is, the stress that this is causing to people who work in hospital is beyond anything I can explain to you. I know so many nurses and doctors who are thinking of changing career and quitting because they can't handle it anymore, because of the emotional toll. Whether you're vaccinated or not, that's your choice, but there are consequences to every action. When you're in an ICU, I just saw this doctor from Idaho, the head of hospital in Idaho, talk about this. 97% of the people there, small northern part of the state, is all unvaccinated. And they're all there, ICU bed, hospital of 200 people, they have no room. They are canceling people who are supposed to have bypass surgery. They're canceling all kinds of other operations suspended to get beds. They're in the hallways, they're in the classroom, they're everywhere, right? Yet the decision that the doctors and the nurses and the respiratory specialists have to make is a decision that no one should ever have to make, which is to look at, he was explaining a case where they were all in a conference call and they were talking about this. And he was very embarrassed to have to share this, that for example, they have to determine that if someone comes in, is on an respirator for 2 months and is not improving, and someone else is coming that's younger, that seems to be improving, they're gonna disconnect the person because they think that the person who's been there for 2 weeks will not survive. And then they will give the respirator to the person they think has a chance of surviving. That's the kind of decision of life and death that's destroying these healthcare workers, that every time you interview them, they're crying and they can't handle it. That kind of guilt, that kind of decision is something that no one has to make. We are living in a crisis that's beyond the scope of anything that we were prepared for. Many of the, I saw an interview with a younger nurse. This one was from the South. I'm trying to think where in the South. It wasn't Mississippi. I forgot. It doesn't matter. And what she was saying is that she's just out of nursing school now. And for 18 months now, she's been working nonstop. And she has put zip body bags in 18 months than anyone should have that done in an entire lifetime. There is a cost to all of this. And if we are light workers and we're trying to be compassionate, we should think not just about our decision, but our decision in relationship to the greater community. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not telling you what to do, okay?
On the other hand, unfortunately, we who are unvaccinated truly believe 100%, without a doubt, that what is being done onto humanity is genocide. It has nothing to do with COVID. It doesn't solve COVID. There are doctors who talk about it, and I sent you the docuseries. I don't know if you looked at it even, but this is what it is. So there is two sides to the coin. There are people who believe 100% that this is genocide with the vaccination. So it has nothing to do with us believing whether we are, herd immunity. It doesn't even exist, herd immunity. I know because I'm in the health field now. So, there's always two sides to an argument, and one has to always look at both sides, not just one side. Always has to look at both sides. That's all I'm going to say to that.
Melton, thank you for sharing your part. I did begin to look at it cursorily, and one thing I'm going to say to you is this, and this is my choice. Anything, particularly now with the rapid change that's going around the planet, there is all kinds of information, because the energy that's going around the planet right now is truth, authenticity, and transparency. But it doesn't mean that everything that shined is the actual truth.
I know, Pierre, but I know in my heart, in my spirit, I've come to a certain level in my spirituality that I know what's right in my core. And I study this. My whole college is against this. My whole college, I study this. I have teachers who've been in the health field for many, many years. I'm not looking at information on YouTube. That's not what I do. I don't care about that. I study this. I know the consequences of vaccinations. I know what happens at a biochemical level inside somebody's body. I'm not repeating somebody's vague information that I don't even know. This is me, my experiences. I know at least 10 people who died already, me personally, of these vaccinations. So you cannot just see things one-sided. Impossible, especially as a spiritual teacher, and I love you. I will always love you. I respect you. You changed my life, but in this one, you're not going to agree.
Melton,
yes.
This is a conversation that should happen privately. Okay.
I know. I 100% agree. But every time I was dreading coming to class that this conversation was. I can't sit here and say nothing when you are saying stuff like that.
I am not finished.
Out of the class from now on. I would love to be included in this class, but I can't hear this any longer.
Listen to me. This is. You are not letting me finish.
Okay.
I haven't even finished what I'm saying.
Okay, Pierre.
Okay.
I'm listening.
The other side of the equation is this. It's truth, authenticity, and transparency. There are multiple parallel realities and experiences that are simultaneously true. Okay? I didn't want this conversation to be about vaccine or COVID. The only reason I brought this up was because I feel and there are two people in the call right now that work in hospitals, and they know exactly what I'm talking about because they're experiencing it. Okay? The reality that you're experiencing, they are not experiencing it. They are not experiencing it. I know of all the people that I know, this is the conversation I didn't want to have. Of all the people that I know that have taken the vaccine, I know of only one person who had an adverse reaction. It was that she developed shingle and she got treated. That was it. Everyone else is fine. Okay? So I'm having a different experience from you. It doesn't mean that what you're saying is untrue.
What I'm saying, all I'm saying is we have to look. I looked at both. I respect everybody who gets vaccinated. I'm not against people who get vaccinated, but we have to be able to understand where the other people are coming from. It's so important, especially when it's splitting everything. Like people are in such a state because they know their truth. I know they will know nothing will change my mind because I study this. So it's so important to understand what the other side is saying by just looking at the information, maybe.
I
Or,
have
you
looked
know,
at the
yeah,
information.
I know.
I
Yeah,
have looked at the information, Melton.
yeah.
Okay, what I'm saying to you is that personally, I am not where you are.
I know, that's fine. And that's
And,
totally fine.
I'm not where you are, and I'm not judging you. This
Me
is
neither. And I'm not judging anybody here,
and,
guys. I love you guys.
and-
And I'm
okay,
just coming
this-
from a worry and from my love for you guys, because we've spent so many years together. And I tell you always, you changed my life. So
do
I
not
want you to
worry
be in my
about me.
life for a long time.
Do not worry about me.
Okay.
Do not worry about me. Okay? Do not worry about me. I don't want to have this conversation if we're talking privately in the phone, that would be fine. But I don't want to have it in a recorded conversation in something that we're doing right now. This is not appropriate.
I know, but you brought it up, and it's
No,
something that I believe in.
What I brought up,
because I don't want this conversation again when I'm in class, because I
no.
want to be a part of it.
No, what I brought up was the healthcare workers and the damage, emotional damage. This is where I was going. I was not talking about whether you should take vaccine or not take vaccine. This is not what I was talking about.
But you did mention that we all have to, you know, be able to see. I mean, there were some parts that were touching me. That's why I felt the need to.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But this whole class is derailing into something I didn't want to do. And I was trying to be so careful to word it the right way. Okay, because this is not a conversation that I want to have like this.
Me too. I don't want to. I want to come here and love you guys and do what we always do.
And to be perfectly honest, you know, I'm gonna drop it and I'm gonna move on.
Okay.
Truth, authenticity, and transparency. Okay. We need to be very aware, and I know this is the way I am, that when information comes to me, to my consciousness, particularly now, because you may believe what you're experiencing right now, and this is true. For example, I know several people who participated in the January 6th riot, and they were in Washington and all that, and at the time when they were going, they were completely convinced, 100%, that what they were doing was the truth. And they were doing it for all the right reasons. And I said nothing. I let them, you know, they participated, they did whatever they did. And I know a few of them now that have been awakened to a different understanding. And the reason I'm saying this is that because the truth that you're understanding right now is not the ultimate truth. We are processing, the whole planet is moving to various levels and degrees of truth. And that's the key. Hold your judgment, stay quiet, pay attention to the knowing. This is my truth as it stands right now. A year from now, it may be a completely different truth, because the light of the galactic equator, the light of truth, authenticity, and transparency is a light that's being released on a dimmer. It will increase slowly, gradually. And to each one of us, when that light touches us, it will trigger and reflect in us. When it blends with us, it will begin to blend and create connect and inflate whatever part of us that emotionally we have not completely mastered yet. I spoke about this 2 weeks ago, and I remember saying at the time in class, this conversation, that one has to be extremely careful that when you are convinced of your truth, that you don't go out there, because this is what particularly these few friends of mine that were part of this January 6th kind of conspiracy theory kind of thing, going to Washington and all that, they were completely convinced, and they were trying to radicalize and trying to spread that information because it was the truth that was going to save the world. That is something that no one that's ascended would ever do. The ascended masters, no matter how much they know, when they are seeing you walking a path, they will try to warn you. And after that, they step out because it's your dharma, it's your karma, and it is your responsibility to figure out your way. The same way God was able to reach you and touch your heart and change and transform you. God is capable of doing the same thing for everyone on the planet. You're not God's assistant. It's not your responsibility to go after everyone and try to change them. And that's the truth. I spoke about this 2 weeks ago. And moreover, the truth that you have right now, there's a whole series of other glass ceiling that needs to be broken for you to get into deeper and deeper and deeper level of understanding. And therefore, you need to understand that you're getting an insight, and that insight, you cannot split somebody else's head and put it in. You're getting an insight at this moment because the ascended masters know so much more than all of us. They have no desire to try to bypass our experience by trying to tell us which way to go. They are letting us figure it out. They give us a little guidance here and there, and then the rest is up to us. And if we're trying to emulate their behavior, we should be acting in a similar fashion. Okay, we should be, and to my mind, and here are the things that I'm following, because I get triggered as well as anybody else. When I begin to research and do certain kind of information, it triggered emotionally me as well. And then after that, I have to go into deep meditation and realize I'm triggered. What am I experiencing? I'm experiencing fear. If it's coming from fear, if it's generating, whatever it is that that data or information that's being brought to my attention, if it's generating fear, if it's trying to have me become radicalized, if it's asking me to take mass action and to go out there and try to change the world, it's not my path, because I exist in neutrality. It is not, it cannot be my truth. And I have to calm down. No matter how agitated I am, I have to calm down and find what is the third path. Because right now, if you're noticing, the planet is poised as if we're on a seesaw. And some people have called it the bifurcation. There is a split in the road of two paths. And the two paths are opposite to each other. And they are set for a battle. I have to tell you something. The real culprit that's behind both paths is the all-comers. And they are working both sides. They are agitating both sides, because as long as there is chaos and there is agitation, we will not find the real path, which is a third path. And I have to say to you that it took a while for me to get there, because I was agitated. I was bothered. I was, even with Black Lives Matter, I remember somebody was asking me, my friend kept saying me all of this, after Floyd murder, go to the rally, we're right on Union Square, come here, text me, all of this. And I knew well enough that I can't go. Because if I go, okay, I'm going to explain something to you. For a Black person, 400 years of institutionalized racism, and for that matter, slavery, triggers you to a point that I can't even begin to describe to you, because it was institutionalized, government and church approved human trafficking. There has never been an apology for it, ever. And I don't mean to make people uncomfortable. I'm just trying to explain to you the emotional state and the turmoil internally that happened for me. Because there's a part of me that volcanically can erupt, and I will start spinning out of control, and all my ancestors will be behind me. And I will lose my perspective, my sight, and I will become completely fanatical. And I knew if I had gone to any of the protests and started engaging, this is where I was going to go. I made a conscious choice because I realized that the reason for this setup with Floyd and all the other killing, the Archons are behind it. And they are trying to derail someone like me from finding that third path. And therefore, I'm not going to jump in it. I'm not going to let them win and let them manipulate me. This idea of separation and division between left and right and this, that, or the other, it's all an illusion. It's the same puppet master. The true path is a third path. And by the way, that's the title of my next book that I'm working on right now. The third path, which is the a subtitle, Finding Safe Passage to the New Earth. We're being set up. And so I have to calm down. And there's a reason why I'm so careful on mass media to post. I'm carefully curating what I'm saying, curating the conversation, curating what I'm saying, because it's so easy to inflame this side or that side. And I'm telling you, the true path toward the new earth is neither. And if you're engaged in those paths, you're literally being derailed by forces that are so smart and so intelligent that they're manipulating you without you even realizing you're being manipulated. So I have to realize this, and I have to move on into something else. What I was saying a little bit earlier about the healthcare workers is that the experiences that we've been having, and this happened to me last week. I told you, I think on the class on last Tuesday, I had shared with the class that on Monday, the day before, I had heard that a friend of mine that's 54 years old passed away. He died for 5 days. No one discovered him. And when they did discover him, he was so disfigured that closed casket, no one can actually see him. There's been a lot of death, a lot of dying, and the core experience and the opportunity for transcendence that is being presented for us to find that third path. And the core thing that we need to work on is grief. Everyone right now that's working in a hospital, Marjorie works for a doctor, Diane works in a hospital, it's grief. Because you're seeing things that no one should see. You're experiencing things that no one should experience. And because of this, and because you're working on the front line, you're seeing it much more than the rest of us. It doesn't mean we're not seeing it, because I'm seeing it as well and I'm experiencing it. And grief happens in 5 stages. The first stage is denial. The second stage is anger. Third stage is depression. Then you have after that negotiation. And the final stage is acceptance. When the losses, and as I said, loss of mobility, loss of so many losses that are happening right now. This is why I started with the class by saying nothing will ever be the same again. What these events are trying to teach us as a people, humanity, what it is trying to teach us is this. It's trying to teach us to overcome survival. Because the bifurcation, both sides believe that they're trying to survive. And what I'm saying to you in so many words, and maybe not so eloquently, but what I'm saying to you in so many words is that the third path is not about survival. It's about thriving. And it's about something else. But for us to be able to get to that state, we need to vibrate ourselves in a completely different way. Because for me, when I lost my cousin, when I lost the first few friends that Marjorie called and said, do we know so-and-so? You remember so-and-so? He passed away from COVID. This is in the early days. This is March, April to May of last year. It seems that every 2 days, there was a conversation about another friend that was dead. And of course, the first thing is to say, this is not true. It's a lie. It's an illusion. And as you begin to process things, and by the way, these emotions we talked about, these 5 emotions, you can experience 2 or 3 of them at the same time. You can be negotiating and be in anger at the same time. You can be depressed and at the same time be in denial. All of them, whether it is the climate change events, whether it is there are people that I know recently that got flooded because of the last hurricane. There are losses everywhere. And these losses, you have to be able to process them because it's making you afraid. It's making you feel afraid of storm, making you afraid and think, I got to survive. I have to figure out, should I move? Should I have spiritual agility? Should I go there? Should I? And if you go deep inside of yourself, and this is the opportunity that these external events, you know what the truth is? We collectively as human beings have failed to learn by grace, which is to learn by watching and by witnessing and by growing in wisdom. And because of where we were supposed to be as a species, we are not there. Now we are learning by karma, which means that everything is external now. It's like opening up the genie's out of the bottle. Everything is external. So these events are happening and they will seem to happen to us. But what all they are about is for us to find transcendence, to realize, for example, when I'm grieving and I'm so afraid, I'm going to share my personal experience. As I was grieving for family members, for friends, and what did I lose when I was, and I was very candid with you last year in March, in April, that the grief and the loss of mobility and everything else that COVID did to me made me even doubt my purpose and my role, because I knew this was coming. I knew it. I've known it since 2015. But I thought I would be ready. Guyville would be created. I would be up in the mountains. I would be, the village would be created. All of you as community would be in there. And I realized I'm not ready. And I thought to myself, my God, I failed. I failed my entire purpose. I was supposed to guide humanity, create a doorway to a new world. Where is all of this? This is a complete failure. And I'm like, okay. if I did fail, then maybe I should spend the rest of this life sitting on the beach having umbrella drinks. Forget the heavy work that I've been doing for the past 20 years in my life. I'm supposed to just chill. Don't worry about the world or whatever is going on. Go upstate and just have a few party with friends and hang out. Just do none of that heavy stuff. But what it did do for me is that it made me realize that there were things personally I was afraid of, not for myself. Okay? I was not afraid for my life. I was not afraid of dying. What I was afraid of is to fail in this mission. That was the part that was devastating for me. And because it was so devastating, I actually surrendered the whole thing to God. I said, okay, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe this was not my purpose. I'm going to give it to God. I'm going to surrender and give it all to God and say to God, take this away from me. Take this away from me. I'm not doing this again. And the moment I did this, and I really meant to let it go, let all of it go, instead of trying to hang on to, maybe I can still do it by doing this, by doing that, by doing that. The moment I did this, with clarity, I could see that the bifurcation was nothing more than the same plank, a seesaw, and we were being manipulated and played. And that there was a third path, and it was the third path that I needed to focus on. This was February of last year. Because in March 7th, I began to teach the Ascension and Planning Leadership class. That's this whole series over a year and a half classes, where I have all of these incredible beings now that are ready to move and who have been initiated by Lower Melchizedek into the Melchizedek order. Because I finally, and again, I got to the depth of my grief. I got to the depth of what I was afraid of. And what I'm saying this to you, I'm sharing my experience with you, is that I want you to think about your own personal experience and your grief and the fear that these external events are creating for you. And whatever that is that you feel you cannot control, that seems almost overwhelming, do the universal breath and let it go, give it to source. I don't know what's going to happen for you. I can't determine your path, but that's what I did. And the moment I did this, within a matter of days, Spirit said to me, I want you to now teach classes with that new path that you discovered. And I want you to teach it in a way that you never did before. And in truth, it was, I started teaching in March in a way that I never taught before. And I've been doing this since then. Because I made a lot of assumptions years before about a lot of things that I said to you that I thought you understood, that Spirit right now was whispering to me, Pierre, they don't get what you're saying. Go back and explain it again in a completely different way. And show them that third path. Show them by being the third path. No one will listen to you. Doesn't matter what you say. Barely 10% of the population will listen to your word. Again, as I said before, we don't learn by grace. We learn by experience. So in order for me to demonstrate that path, I have to become the path. I have to be as neutral as possible. I have to demonstrate it by showing that third path so that you can see it. I have to become the change that I'm talking about. So it's important for all of us to understand that we are all growing dynamically. Whereas before this kind of that battle, that plank, that seesaw existed inside of us. Now the seesaw is outside. And the puppet masters are working on both sides of it. And thus we have to be super intelligent enough not to let ourselves be triggered and begin to realize that we have to go into a different and elevated state. But for you to do this, you have to go into how you're being triggered, what fear is this creating in you, deep really in your core. And then since you cannot control the fear, and this is what I realize as well, the plant, there's a something going on that's global, whether it is climate change, COVID, or whatever else. There are events that are going around the planet right now that none of us can control, no one. And because of this, I gave it over to a higher power. I gave it over to the emptiness and the luminosity. I gave all of it away, all my fear, all of the trigger, all of the things that was making me afraid, making me feel that I'm not rested. This is why I had said before, that even if you think you're sleeping, you're not really sleeping. Because most of us, consciously or unconsciously, are being triggered by all kinds of things that are causing us to be in agitation, right? And it's that agitation that is now becoming, if you release it process it and release it in the proper way, that becomes the beginning of the medicine, which is to realize there is an internal process, that emotion and that feeling that I'm having right now, that seems to be so overwhelming and so irrational. I'm acknowledging and again, for me at the time in February, it was an acknowledgement in vulnerability. It was a deep and profound acknowledgement on how vulnerable I was and how much I thought I had failed. I had known this since 2015. And so it's important for me to go into that space and to realize that okay, this is incredible. And if I can acknowledge this and say, I'm vulnerable now, and let me give it to the channeling were very clear. Out of all this chaos that they mentioned, they said the first thing they said, cultivate your relationship to your higher power, because that's the only thing that will take you through. That was the first path toward this new earth that they described. It's the cultivation of your connection to your higher God concept. Acknowledge that you're afraid. Acknowledge that you lost control. Acknowledge that things are overwhelming you. That's what I did. And the moment I did this, I got to the bottom of it. I'm like, okay, now the only thing I can do is that I can give it to you, because it's too heavy for me. I can't carry it. I'm gonna give it over to you. You are capable of everything. The next day when I woke up, I did my meditation. It was so clear. There was a new path. This is what you need to do. You're going to teach it in a completely different way. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. And I saw the path forward. I saw what I'm supposed to do. Not completely, but in outline form, enough for me to have a direction, because they never tell you everything. They tell you just enough for you to go. You know what I'm talking about. They never give you all the details, all of the, I expect a whole book, an encyclopedia with, a Google map with all of the, you know what I'm talking about, Diana.
Yeah, yeah, that would be so much easier. They'd leave that little thread and then you're like, what do I do with this?
Pull on it, pull on it. Yes, yes, yes. And so this is the way I got enough information to know, pull on the thread, do this, and as I did it, the path illuminated in front of me, one after the other. It illuminated. And I'm still have to be very careful how I talk about this, because I know I sound crazy to many people, but hopefully not to you, because you understand neutrality, you understand, what the forces that we're dealing with. Because as I said, the puppet masters have worked both sides of every conflict since the beginning of time to try to agitate us. And it is their last stand to stop us, because the next stop is the new earth. And if they can capture as many people as possible by fanning both sides of the conflict or apparent conflict, we will be lost. They will capture as many souls as possible, and they will grab them and they will remain behind, and very few of us will find the path of the new earth. That's their agenda. So it's to exist in that space where you begin to realize, and I have to say to you, even though I had that insight, because I'm still connected to the group body of humanity. There are other days, even let's say a month ago, there were moments where I'm realizing I'm not completely at rest. I wake up and I'm feeling tightness, and I'm realizing there is still grieving. There's still fears. In other words, what I'm trying to describe to you is that the state of surrender and giving everything to spirit is not an event. It's not a one-time thing. It's a continual process, because the outcome are continuing to agitate both sides over and over again. And we are in this until 2027. The agitation will continue. The turbulence will continue. Imagine if by next month we get a hurricane that's category 6 or 7. What is that going to do to the Caribbean? What is that going to do to the coast, the eastern seaboard? Do you understand? And the fear it's going to generate. And even though I was talking to a student of mine about a week and a half ago when Larry was going through New Orleans. She's originally from New Orleans. And she was texting me and asking me, pray for New Orleans. And as she's telling me this, she's also the southern of Lake Tahoe is on fire, and the this and the that. And I had to call her and say, okay, I love you very much, and I want to pray for everybody. But right now, I am dealing with a dead president in Haiti, an earthquake, 2 hurricanes just went by. There's fire in Lake Tahoe. There is the hurricane that's coming in Louisiana right now. There is also fires all over California, all over Canada. There's all kind of. If I were to take all of this to heart and try to pray for everyone, I would be a basket case. I cannot take all of this, and this is where the surrender into higher power comes in. If I were to let all of this in my emotional body, I wouldn't be able to walk and do what I need to do. That's why I feel so sorry for the healthcare workers that are in hospital that are dealing with this in the front line. That's why I feel so sorry for them. And because a lot of them are deep friends, a lot of doctor friends of mine and nurses, I know a lot of them, and they complain to me. And for me, I'm not in that front line, but I'm in a different front line energetically. When people are telling me to pray for this, pray, energetically, I connect to the energy, and I'm beginning to realize, oh my God, I get overwhelmed. And I realize I'm so small and insignificant. And there are things that are going on that are so much bigger than me. And I don't need to demonize this side or that side because they are not the people that are really responsible. They are just pawns, whoever you think, or the leaders or whatever is agitating which group or what group. They are just pawns. The true enemy is invisible, is somebody else. And thus I have to let go and I have to start saying to myself, I'm going to give it to what I know. If you go back over any of my channeling, the first item, how do you thrive during the transit? The first item is your connection to your higher power and surrendering all of the things that the transition is gonna agitate in you. Completely let it go, because you're gonna realize you're gonna experience things that no one in any other time I've ever experienced before. And until you can surrender and you can let go and you can give it to that higher power and say, I am vulnerable, I am scared, and I am afraid. Till you can acknowledge that fear, you will not find the reprieve. And the third path will not show up for you. Now, I have to tell you that in the bifurcation, and this is the crazy part, you remember in all the channeling, they kept saying all the time that multiple realities are occupying the same space. That part is absolutely true. Because part of what one side of the seesaw believe is true. Part of what the other side of the seesaw believe is also true. But it's the emotion and the agitation and the story that is being done by the puppet masters that is wrong. And more to the point, when you are neutral enough, and for those of you who have taken the series of classes that I've been teaching since March of 2000, the 4 classes that I've taught so far, the first, the Ascendance and Planetary Leadership, the Monadic Merger, all of it taught in a way that I've never done before. So in depth and so completely like gifting information that I had taken for granted that everyone understood, but that no one really understood. And then the third one, which is the cultivation of the virtue, right? And then now the Order of Melchizedek series. So one of the things that you have to understand is that in teaching these classes, I had to become aware that this neutral path is not easily visible. And more to the point, the moment you reach that neutral point and you're looking at the external events, hurricane, earthquake, whatever catastrophic, the crisis du jour, whatever it may be, okay? When you're looking at all of this, the first, and if you're deeply neutral, what actually, and you go into source and you realize, okay, I'm feeling vulnerable now, something is about to happen and I don't have control over it. Like, for example, when my client was calling me and there were 7 or 8 different crises, people had reached out to me to tell me globally in the planet that was happening. How many people do I have to be? I felt like Kuan Yin. There was a story about Kuan Yin where she, her name means she who hears the suffering of the world. And there was a point that she was trying to help so many people, and there were so many crises she couldn't handle it anymore. And she went to Gautama Buddha and started crying and said, I cannot help them. And Gautama Buddha did 2 things for her. split her head in three so that she could look at three places at the same time, and gave her 1,000 hands so that she could respond to 1,000 prayer requests at the same time. I'm not Kuan Yin. I don't have that ability. I'm just a human being that may be 2 or 3 weeks ahead of you in terms of wisdom and understanding. My light is still very dim. And I'm not, I have to acknowledge this. And when I feel overwhelmed, I have to go into the state of surrender and give to God all of this, because true ascendance is a narrow edge that exists between action, doing, and surrender. The power of the ascended community, all of the Holy Ghost, all of the spiritual hierarchy, is that they know when to act and when not to act. And how do they know? They surrender everything into the vast and immense blessed field that knows much more than them. And if you can do this, what happened? And this is the point of me teaching this class. And some of you in the class have experienced this. Let's say there's a crisis, there's a hurricane or whatever it is that's showing up for you. And as it is showing up, you surrender your vulnerability, your fear, and your incapability of controlling it. And you give it over to your higher power, to God. And you say, God, I'm not capable of solving this. I'm giving it to you. The moment you get that neutral, what shows up then, when you really let it go completely, a fan opens up around you. And it's typically 3 or more things that are the solution set, and they're all different from each other. This is why I'm saying this idea of multiple parallel realities overlapping each other. There's a path that's going this way. There's a path that's going that way. There's a third path. There's so many different paths. And when I get into that state of neutrality, I see them all open up. And some of you are already experiencing this right now. You see the value that exists in these various positions. And what it brings in your heart is gratitude and wisdom. Because we are so trapped in one cause, one effect, that if you're truly neutral, there is never one cause. And if you go into deep and deep surrender, you begin to open up and you're beginning to see multiple reasons, multiple paths, and various movement going forward. This is a state of you becoming a multi-dimensional being. This is a state of true ascendance. This is a state where real wisdom begin to show up. Any questions, any comments?
Thank you, Pierre. It makes a great deal of sense. Where I'm thinking at the moment about the third rail, so to speak, the third path, not being necessarily an action, but a state of surrender. Now that we are in this era of truth, transparency, and authenticity, it should be easier to do that surrender as long as we can release the fear. Also, didn't Lord Melchizedek invite us to call upon him as part of the initiates in the order of Melchizedek to guide our paths. Should that be part of our process now?
Thank you, Janice. Yes. So indeed, but okay, this is what I was trying to explain before. The truth, the light of truth, which is an external catalyst. Truth, authenticity, and transparency is coming from the galactic core. It's an external catalyst. How it connects to you and I will depend on you and I, our own stand and emotional maturity. So for some people who are more emotionally mature, they will be not easily, but they will more or less find their way, because it wasn't easy for me. If I was a mess. January, because the moment the Wuhan virus began in China, I knew, because I had already foresaw it. I knew, and I was a mess, and I knew something is coming. I can't stop. Right? So, because I've been predicting it since 2015, so I knew. So for me, some of us, when that energy comes and connects to you, some event is happening, and the event is an accelerant to cause something that you're not dealing with to show up. And in my case, I had to go to the bottom of my own vulnerability. And my vulnerability was failure in what I'm trying to teach you. It's complete failure. That I failed again. I've been doing this for 5,000 years. And I don't want to fail again. I came to Earth 5,000 years ago to try to help humanity, and I've been unsuccessful thus far. So this is where this was hitting me, right? And I'm saying this because wherever you are emotionally, that external accelerant will connect to you, and you will interpret that light of truth with your own fear and your own filter. So it's important not only to call on Lord Melchizedek for assistance, and all of us are lucky to have received that initiation, and he will certainly assist you, but more to the point, you need to be doing your emotional intelligent work, your Dantian work, to get to the core of what really is agitating you. In what way does this external event is rubbing against you? And what is it triggering for you? And get to the bottom of the trigger, and again, learning how to release it into source. There's no other way to do it. Because Lord Melchizedek cannot grow for you. Yes, he will assist you by giving you guidance, by whispering into your ears, trying to mentor you. And I would look at this, I would do this, I would move this way, but he will never do the work for you. Does that make any sense, Janice?
Yes, yes.
And for me, it was a great opportunity, because I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful. And again, when I was channeling this the end of every year, I get these channeling, but it's from the perspective of the Galactic Reaching Council. I'm connected to them while I'm doing this. I see that something very distant, and I'm completely emotionally disconnected to it, blah, blah, blah. When it began to happen, there was no emotional, I was in the bubble, I was in it. And I had no clarity, I was completely confused. I was lost and overwhelmed.
I thought perhaps our Lord Melchizedek could help hold a mirror up to us so that we could see more clearly our own vulnerabilities. Perhaps that's just what we have to spend time doing ourselves then.
I don't know if it's Lord Melchizedek that can do this, but you're triggering my memory. I don't remember if it's Ray, number 9 or number 10. But there is one of the rays where you go to at a cosmic accelerator, I think Saint Germain, and it's in the yes, it's Saint Germain, and it's in the Rocky Mountains in a cave, and there's a mirror, and the mirror will show you what you're hiding to yourself. This is we have journey. Remember, we did the 12 rays, the centricity of the 12 rays, and we journey to all the various rays to the ashram of each ascended master. But you just triggered my memory of this particular experience. It was the, I think if you look at in your notes, the beautiful graphic thing that you did for us, Janice, I think it was in the Rocky Mountains, and there was a atomic accelerator, and there was also a mirror. And the mirror, and I remember the class so vividly because when we did it here in my apartment, there were 3 people that were in tears because it showed them the thing that they were hiding for themselves. So that's what this is triggering for me. I think Lord Melchizedek is on a different scale.
Okay.
And he's doing he's trying to guide us into other kind of work, which is once we find the path of neutrality, is to get to him, he will begin then to take over and help us in our further ascension.
No, I thank you for that recollection of the ray for Saint Germain. That'll be helpful.
Yes. I don't remember if it's 9 or 10, but it's one of the higher rays. I remember that part, and it was a ashram. Oh, I'm sorry. It might have been ray 7. It could have been ray 7 because that's the violet flame. It could have been ray 7. Well, anyway, it's one of the rays, and it's in the Rocky Mountain, and there is an atomic accelerator, and there's also a mirror. And when you look in that mirror, because I journey you all there, and I remember the reaction was extremely emotional because people were able to see what they were blinded themselves to. Because we're all masters of self-deceit. And particularly right now, when we're being manipulated by the Archon, some of this stuff is not visible. But again, here is the greatest part. If you know this, you're going to win. Every time you go to an experience where you're feeling those feelings, and again, as I said, it's not an event, it's a process. So although the core event happened to me in February of 2020, but I've gone to several dip into that pool again, where I had to pull myself out and realize, okay, I've been there before. I know what that space is like. I need to surrender more of this. I am still lost. I still feel grief. I feel overwhelmed. I am in fear. Okay? And I need to surrender, that I go. And what this has done for me, it has connected me to my God in such an intimate and powerful way that I cannot even begin to describe to you. And this is the only way into the third path. This is the only way toward the new earth. It's that intimacy with your higher power, and it can only happen between you and God. I cannot teach it to you. I cannot give it to you. I cannot split it I cannot share what's in me into you.
It wouldn't be ours then.
That's right. That's exactly what you have to own it. That's exactly the point. You have to own it. That's why the Lord Melchizedek cannot gift it to you.
No.
That's why it has to happen organically within. It has to grow. It has to evolve. It has to, And again, inch by inch, moment by moment. And again, as I know this, I've had, as I said, about a month ago, there was another dip for me. there was another dip. I went in and I just went down, in that crevice, and I was like, okay, I know what that feels like. I know what this is. This is more fear, and I need to go and then surrender, go back to my true ascension is the edge. In the Kabbalah, it's the crossing of what they call the bridge that exists at Dot, the invisible Sephirah. That bridge is a razor sharp edge, and you have to walk on it. Any little infraction in either direction, you will fall into this pit. That's the analogy that the Kabbalists have used. But what it is emotionally, we're going through it right now, is that we have to hold ourselves accountable to become as neutral as possible, and we have to catch it as this adjutant, this external agitating event occurring. We have to catch it, and we have to grab it and see it not as a horrible experience, but as an incredible opportunity to find peace and to now exist with my God. So that edge is, you surrender the fear, you let it go, you surrender it completely into neutrality. And when you completely let it go and you feel completely unburdened, what then happens is that there is an echo that comes from the blessed field. A perfect nullifying frequency and solution set. And sometimes what shows up is 3 or more different things that needs to happen. I have multiple examples of this. I don't want to get into all the details at this moment where this has happened to me, where I've, instead of one thing, again, going back to my fear and processing, fear of survival, again, connected to this experience. When I began to realize I was afraid of survival, this was regarding, for me, fear of survival. And the survival was connected to multiple things that showed up. I grew up in Haiti. This is the voodoo land. You're afraid of your shadow. You're afraid of everything. Of course, you have to survive. So the cause of it is coming from there. My mother was extremely, I couldn't take a vacation. I couldn't go anywhere. None of us could. We have to always be around her. She has to watch over us because she's afraid something is going to happen to us. The epigenetic memory of an entire race who's been wronged for slavery on and all that, that also was part of the fan that opened up as a reason for me being in survival all the time. And there were 3 other more reasons, things that opened up in front of me, and all of them were simultaneously true. You have to be very neutral for this to show up. In other words, you become so vulnerable and your surrender has to be complete. And to the degree that the rock you're going to throw in that pool of light is really thrown, where you say, I can't control all of this, then the solution set shows up for you, and 3 or 4 things shows up as potential, not only root cause, but also solution set shows up in the same way. And then you're able to navigate.
And I would assume, Pierre, if I could just
Yes.
ask one more question, sorry to take another bit of time, but I would assume then that while the world around us may not change, we could still prosper and be at peace and be in our third path in the middle of it all.
Absolutely. And when enough of us will have done this, and this is the whole point of what I'm trying to teach, when enough of us will have done this, we will demonstrate to humanity through our own neutral embodiment, we will demonstrate to humanity the actual doorway to the new earth. The doorway is not going to show up by itself. We have to anchor it. We have to demonstrate it. We are the one that are going to be doing this. Each one of us in our own unique way have to anchor this manifestation of the divine, this light. We have to show it and demonstrate it to the world. And to the degree we're capable of doing this, and we're capable of, again, arriving at this, and collectively we begin to work together and we'll begin to harmonize. If you can think of a tuning fork, Janice, you're a musician, you know this better than me. If you strike one tuning fork and they're the same key, they will vibrate and reverberate together, and they will increase the amplitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If 20 of us can do this together, 144,000, then the doorway to the new earth will be demonstrated. And finally, humanity will be, osmosis will begin to see, oh my God, this is what I couldn't see. That's why I cannot teach this on mass media. I can't teach it to the average person. They're not going to get it. This is something, and again, I'm going to be reteaching that series of classes again, starting in October, but I will start again with the first class. It's a year and a half. I can take somebody from zero right into it and show you exactly what's supposed to happen. And I've said this in the class, on the Melchizedek class, on the Melchizedek class I'm teaching right now. There's a book by Dr. Stone called The Revelation of the Melchizedek Initiate. Do I have it here? Yes, I do. This book. So in this book, he described his ascension process with a core, what he called a core group. There were 7 people with him in California that were doing work together after the harmonic conversions. So between harmonic conversions was in 1987. So he began to do work with a group of spiritual teacher like him, and they all ascended together because of the work they were doing together. They were literally in lockstep. They would talk and do collective work, sometimes twice a week, sometimes 3 times. They would literally move in lockstep. They would do the same exercise, the same meditation, and they would dream together. And as they did this, they all ascended. That's what needs to be repeated. But whatever he did, and the way he did it in 1992, 93, and 94 cannot be done right now. And I'm going to tell you why. Because he was not dealing with wildfire in California where you can breathe. Or like my clients, you have to flee because the fire is right behind your house. Those kind of external events or agitating fear of survival that him and his core group didn't have to contend with. We're in a different time, and we are being, different muscle has to be exercised. This is where the emotional, social, and spiritual intelligence, which is the cultivation of the virtue, has to step in. And this is where my teaching comes in. Because whatever he wrote is not, it's not that everything is not relevant. A lot of it is relevant, but the process is different now because we have everything externalized.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of value in this book, and the other one is way over there that I just got, which is Beyond Ascension, and many of his other books. There's a lot of value, but if you try to duplicate it in today's, he was living in California, Mount Shasta, and all of that. One of my clients had to flee Mount Shasta because of the fire. There were 3 fires burning there. So if you have to worry and pick up your pets, your animals, and run to your car so that you can get out of the way, you're not going to be in surrender state to try to connect to God and let go of everything. It's a different muscle. So we are being asked to do things slightly differently. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for the reminder of the third path. I needed to hear it again. I was very triggered this past week. They mandated certain things, and I had to teach my last class yesterday, so everything's raw. And there's grief, of course. Can't teach yoga anymore and stuff like that.
Mm.
So if you're feeling very cornered here because of the choices we're making, and it's very painful. So thank you. I need to find neutrality and let go.
Oh, I love you. Thank
Love
you. Love you, love you, love you.
And I'm sorry, you know.
No, no, don't.
I didn't mean it. It's
No,
just everything
no.
is so raw right
I
now.
understand. I love you. No,
Love you
you don't
too.
need to say anymore. I got it. I got it. I got it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. All right, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll do the closing meditation on the way back, okay? 5 minutes. Take a very deep and slow breath. And as you inhale and exhale deeply and slowly, allow the universal life force that permeates everything to enter into your lungs. Keep breathing deeply and slowly. And let your soul and your awareness drop in the middle of your chest. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. I become aware of all of the fears, agitations, and overwhelming emotional state that may exist in me. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. Please forgive me. I love you. And I let go. I become aware of all of the fears that are generated by survival. What am I really afraid of? Take a very deep breath. Surrender and let go. And ask yourself, what is the root causes of the survival? And in whatever ways that the root causes may show up for me, I release all attachments, fears, and control. Of survival. And I surrender it into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I become aware of any fears or triggers that are generated by climate change events. I acknowledge the triggers and I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender all of them into the great emptiness. And endless luminosity. I let go. I become aware of all of the fears that are being generated by disease. As I acknowledge those fears, acknowledge my grief, I call upon my higher power and I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness. And endless luminosity. I acknowledge my complete emotional vulnerability and lack of control over all of these external events that are triggering me into panic, fear, and survival. Lord, take this cup away from me. By my own merit and device, I cannot manage this. I am only human. And I don't have the strength, the wisdom, nor the power to fix or to repair anything. But to you, Lord, that is endless, infinite, these challenges are easily repaired. Grant me the mercy, the grace of your redemption. And bring me into your peace, your serenity, and your equanimity. Take these burdens away from me and help me find the path of neutrality. Show me a way to disconnect to the Maya and the convincing illusions that the 3D world is creating all around me. Grant me your peace. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender into the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity. I release all attachments, fears, and control. And I surrender to the great emptiness and endless luminosity. From the roots of Amen, and into the throne room of God, I surrender myself completely into your care. Gift me your peace. Show me your neutrality. And may I radiate to the world the freedom, the liberation, and the path toward the new earth. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Thank you for the blessings. I accept the gifts and I receive with gratitude. Take a very deep and slow breath. And whenever you feel ready, you can open your eyes. Hmm. How you all feeling?
Thank you, Pierre. Much later.
Wonderful, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Yes, yes. Freedom
Beautiful,
and
beautiful.
liberation. Yes, liberation is a wonderful thing.
Oh, yeah, yes. The
Uh,
shit we carry, we don't even realize.
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just wanted to say thank you to Pierre. It's wonderful to be back.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you back, Janice. I love you so much.
Thank
Miss
you.
you so deeply. Thank you, thank you.
Love you too.
All right, everyone, I'm gonna let you go. Deep love, and I'll talk to all of you next week. And
Thank you,
remember,
Pierre.
don't deny the emotion. Go into it. Realize you're vulnerable. Let it go. Let God take it away. Love you.
Thank you.
Love you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Good
Pierre.
night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.